I've been quite far from scientific research for a couple of years, and when I got introduced to participate in the conference, that actually came as a surprise. And that's why today I'm going to share a very practical presentation, and it's a very practical topic, helping learners to improve their ability to write cover letters. The reason why it's chosen, I'm pretty sure that everybody knows what the cover letter and the theory behind it is well known, and it's really, really boring. And that's one of the reasons why I've chosen this particular topic, because teaching a lot of exam students and teaching a lot of adults, I actually came across a problem that students usually do not like writing classes. And as soon as you mention that next lesson is going to be writing, basically lots of your students disappear, or they become sick, or something happens. And that's why I decided that studying this topic and maybe trying to make it more interesting is important, to make sure that students do not overlook this important sphere of learning and this important skill. So to start my presentation, I'll start with some basic things. So it is known that it is through the mastery of writing that the individual comes to be fully effective intellectual organization. That is a quotation I found in Tribble, his work of 1996. And writing cover letters is an important skill, as most adult English learners have instrumental motivation in learning English, as they need to apply for jobs, they really need to write cover letters, and they really need this skill not only while taking their exams, but in real life. That is a really, really important skill, but associated with boredom. And because of this, the skill is overlooked, the writing is not edited, and a lot of questions arise just because of this particular sphere. So I have general ideas about what is a cover letter. I think we'll just look very quickly through them. Maybe that is something which is worth mentioning to learners, or maybe just giving them some kind of an overview, which you can send to them online, which is now happens to everybody. You can send it before the class, so they just read the theory, especially the adult learners, they can do it by themselves. And then when they come to the class, they already have some background. So that is a formal letter describing the accompanying documents or other items and the reasons for sending them. Apparently, the cover letter is a type of transactional letter, as it has specific purpose to get a job and is written in response to a written input, that is a job vacancy. It introduces a candidate and their qualifications to a potential employer. Approaching this task, I decided to look at what an expert writer should know when writing a cover letter and what an expert writer should do when writing a cover letter. So it looks like we should know quite a lot. First of all, we should remember about the purpose of cover letters, and it is to convince a potential employer that the writer is suitable for the position and is worth to be asked to come to an interview. This can be achieved through demonstrating interest in the company or particular vacancy, drawing attention to your CV, highlighting experience and qualifications which are relevant to a particular vacancy. It is important to understand that values and self-interests of the recipient of a cover letter increases your chances of writing a successful letter. Cover letters are a type of reader-based prose, and that is very important because whatever we want to tell about ourselves in a cover letter, we need to measure and we will need to try to view through the eyes of the person reading them. That's why the tenor is of crucial importance when writing that. The expert writer thinks about what the reader needs to know, how to make information clear and accessible, and what an appropriate style is, as this can help him or her to get a particular job. So speaking about content and organization, general ideas. So what we need to include, we include writer's address, reader's address and date, apparently salutation, which we teach our students, introduction, the information about the job and the writer, the job the writer is seeking, how they heard of it, the main body, description of experience and qualifications related to position, closing, where we express willingness to meet at reader's convenience and thanking him for their time, consideration, and attention, and finally signing off. What have I done? Yeah. So now coming to the register. Register is highly influenced by the genre, and it determines experienced writers' lexical choices. So here we need to speak about lexis, The expert writer uses a lot topic-related lexes. There are examples in brackets. The experienced writer also uses chunks of functional language, which we apparently need to our students. Then we need to think about grammar. Here I wrote present perfect because my students, pretty much all levels, and even B2 and C1 have problems with them, with this particular tense. With Russian students, it's clear because we don't have particular tense in our language. If we teach Spanish-speaking students, the problem is that they use present perfect differently. So that's why they also encounter problems. That's why I stated it here. Then we come to style. Cover letters are written in formal style. And I think one of most important spheres which cause lots of problems is lexical density and nominalized style, which create a distant relationship between the reader, making the letter sound formal. So what the expert writer should do when writing a cover letter? Apparently, there are some stages. The first one will be planning, but as we write about our own experience, it doesn't require a lot of time and consideration at this stage. Then we come to drafting, and I always try to tell my students that this particular sphere, we only review the letter mostly at sentence and paragraph level, because more thorough editing comes next. That's where we review our macro features, such as content, organization, and layout, and micro features, such as lexis, discourse, grammar, and style. And finally, we create a final draft. So this is basically the part of the theory, which is good when your students know, especially if we're speaking about B2, C1 students. And then I think the teacher also needs to think about problems the learners can encounter. And one of the problems which I actually come across with my Russian students writing cover letters is that we have problems with layout, especially writing the address. As we write address differently in Russia, we start with the countries and town, and only then we have the street address. And also the level of formality is very different, and that's why it's very difficult to teach Russian students to be as formal as important and to keep to those formality, to that level of formality required for cover letters. The other problem, which I think is worth paying attention to, is that students usually struggle to keep the style of the cover letter formal, and they frequently use contractions, phrasal verbs, personal tone while addressing the reader. And here I would always try to emphasize that not all phrasal verbs are bad. There are a lot of formal phrasal verbs, and I think the teacher is supposed to make that distinction clear and show which phrasal verbs can be used and which shouldn't be. And the last problem is that students do not revise, they do not edit. For example, even when I work with C1 students, they're very meticulous at checking their speaking pieces, but somehow they're very lazy and not very concentrated while working on writing. And to overcome these problems, I would like to share with you a lesson plan, which I very often use, and which I think kind of changes this perception of writing as a very boring skill. So to teach cover letters, to teach cover letters, to teach writing cover letters, I usually start with this slide. So here I have the best job in the world, the desert island caretaker wanted. I guess many of you have heard about this job advert. It was on TV. I think there was a kind of a competition a couple of years ago, maybe about 5 years ago. So they offered to earn £70,000, work only 12 hours a month for six months. Duties were quite fancy, such as feeding turtles, watching whales, picking up the island post, and writing a weekly online blog. So what we usually do with the students, we have a kind of a class discussion of who would like to do this job, what kind of experience and qualification a person needs to do this job. So we usually brainstorm these ideas and come to some ideas together, discuss them in a group. Then I have the other slide showing this person and asking the question if they think he got the job. First of all, we just discuss the person, what they think he's like, what qualifications he might have, what are his character traits. And then apparently we come to the cover letter itself, because here I have the cover letter from this particular person to apply for this job. So we actually read it through very attentively, try to understand why he might have got this job. And then I reveal it to my students that apparently he did get the job. He was the one person chosen among 35,000 of applicants. And this is the sample cover letter which we work with through the class, because then apparently we need to analyze these macro and micro features which I was talking about. And the way we usually do it is the following. We label the parts of the cover letter. So here are traditional parts which we all have. And here is a letter. That is the same letter, but it's done as a handout, so you can actually label it. We usually do it in groups or pairs so that it's more interactive and students can talk to each other. That's perfect in multi-language groups when we are not teaching only Russian students, but when there are several languages. So they practice their speaking skills anyway while discussing it with each other. The next stage will be analyzing functional language, which you will find in any book. And here we try to fill in the table with phrases to talk about experience, phrases to talk about skills and qualifications, and requests to the reader. So that is how we get all our functional language, which I want my students have while writing their cover letter. And finally, we need to come to write something by ourselves. And I decided to make it also a little bit more fun, because we are trying to apply for quite a fancy job called Northern Lights Spotter. Actually, it's a real job. I Googled it. I found it online while trying to find some unusual job vacancy. So the Arctic Snow Hotel in Finland is looking for a seasonal staff member to monitor Northern Lights. So the duties are to stay up all night, alert the hotel guests if Northern Lights happen. And that's what we actually do during the class, because we have already looked at all the features of the cover letter. We gathered the vocabulary to write, and students usually complete this task in pairs or in groups, which makes it more interactive. And then after this is done, we usually have a kind of an exhibition of students' works in the classroom. So I get them all up and they go around to look what each group wrote. And we usually vote for the best applicant who should get this particular job. And hopefully in this way, we manage to get general idea of how to write cover letters, to gain some vocabulary and some grammar and functional language, how to approach the task. And after the class, students usually get the real task of writing their own cover letter. So to equip them with more tools to check and to make sure that they revise it well, I usually include the cover letter checklist, which they can use by themselves. So they read through, they tick what they've done, they come back to what they haven't done, hopefully edit it well. And that's pretty much it. That's pretty much the lesson on the cover letters, which I wanted to share with you today. Thanks for your attention. And if there are any questions, I would be glad to answer them. I think I'm even ahead a little bit, yeah.